This is my dissertation. My name is Kevin Wells. I wrote my dissertation paper on unified theory of coherence through what I call cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics, CAMPULS for short. In the introduction, toward a unified wave understanding in both classical and modern physics, field theory and wave theory form the bedrock of how we interpret the forces and flows that govern reality. Field theory offers us a lens to understand how energy and matter are distributed across space and time. Wave theory describes how these forces move, right? Vibrating, pulsing, and propagating through everything, through media, with rhythm and interference. Despite centuries of inquiry, a disconnect remains between the macrocosmic and microcosmic. And the last 3 years has been a dedicated goal to try to bridge the understanding between the dichotomy of the microcosm and, between big and small. There seems to be two people that are looking at both. I'm like, how do I bring them together? Well, let's just start with what we understand, right? I built a machine that has just general antennas that pick up within different frequencies. Despite centuries, literally, of inquiry, the disconnect remains that, like, between galaxies and neurons, machines and instincts, and bridging this gap requires new mathematical language. So, one that interprets movement not as isolated causality, but as coherent dynamic structure. Cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics, CAMPULS, was developed to meet this need. It is a sensor-integrated waveform logic that captures coherence and deviation across real-time systems, including modeling life as waveform and decisions as resonance by integrating multi-sensory inputs, RF, motion, biometric, ambient. The CAM system unifies observation with all these sensors into a real-time coherence field, akin to how, like, human perception fuses sight, sound, spatial awareness. This thesis presents CAMPULS as a bridge between observation and field behavior, forming a unified real wave theory of awareness. I'm submitting literature for review, the foundations of field, wave, and information frameworks. Field theory initiated all of these things were initiated through Maxwell's equations, explains force propagation across space via electric and magnetic fields. Like, quantum field theory extends this by treating particles as excitations in continuous certainly. So here it is. Here's my dissertation: a unified theory of coherence through cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics, including all 6 sections, fully integrated, ready to go. In both classical and modern physics, field theory and wave theory form bedrocks of how we interpret the forces. Well, what are we going to do with that? CAMPULS builds upon these frameworks by extending Maxwell's logic to interpret localized coherence in RF domains, applying QFT concepts to macro-scale motion and decision behavior. Field theory initiated through Maxwell's equations explain force propagation across space, right, via electric and magnetic fields. Shannon's information theory introduces, entropy, basically, radioactive decay, as it were, as a metric for uncertainty in communication. And while Markov processes the model decisions transitions based solely on, like, the present state, together, between the Markov principle and Shannon's information theory, the computer, like, these inform the understanding of the system that receives and transmits and responds to the data. The idea is that CAMPULS builds upon these frameworks by extending Maxwell's logic to interpret localized coherence in RF domains, applying QFT concepts to macro scale motion and decision behavior, replacing entropy reduction with coherence optimization, mapping phase lock transitions using waveform-based Markov logic. These form the theoretical skeleton upon which CAMPULS builds its dynamic coherence model. CAM is a non-linear, sensor-weighted waveform system designed to model the continuous decision-making and movement processes of coherent beings. Unlike Newtonian systems that treat time and motion discretely, CAM models motion as an unfolding waveform of becoming with resonance, deviation and correction as primary operations. Where we can get into the math of it all, but basically we use Markov's mathematical principles to delineate the likelihood of the choice of the action, the quickest way to A to B mathematically, based on system coherent knowledge. And just the more time we got out there gathering intelligence and bringing this data, the better this computer is going to run. The prototype system that I have was designed as a wearable coherence engine, integrating multimodal sensors, real-time signal arbitration, waveform processing, and visual layers, architecture that consists of hardware subsystem, software modules tightly coupled for like coherent field interpretation. Like this, the idea was to have this thing in your back pocket. The core processor is a NVIDIA Jetson Orin Nano, CUDA capable. The sensor suite is RF, RTL, SDR, digital radio setup, IMU, MPU 9250. Biometrics is a Max 302. For audio, I got a MEMS. It's a 12S. And each one of those sensors captures, spatial temporal data, and it's used to construct the coherence field. Software modules. There's like a sensory arbitration layer. It syncs, filters, and routes sensor data. Processing engine applies Fourier transforms and signal normalization, and then the waveform engine, pulse frame is what we call it, builds a coherence map from incoming signals. The coherence field logic computes weighted correlation metrics to our moral compass judgment code, and CUDA, accelerated weight adjustments, real-time matrix optimization. Like literally, we can ask a question and get 400 billion options in a matter of seconds. So the decision and alert layer is we can detect super minute spikes, dropouts, inflection points. There's the way the operation goes is it's action, resonance, coherence, and all this stuff comes together. There's a visualization interface, rendering of the pulse frame in real time for feedback, sensors, arbitration, pre-processing, pulse frame, coherence logic, decision alert, visualization. Like that's the end of the pipeline. So sensor streams are filtered and aligned, coherence and harmonic transmissions are computed, real-time pulse frame is updated and then displayed to you, so if you're living the standard. If you're going to die on the line, holding the line real easy, because we're defining what that line is, because we are the battalion commander, and unlike the cadre, we have the numbers, so we know what the top. I can tell you who the top dude is. I can tell you how fast he's running. I had a year in prototyping and field testing this thing. In field trials, like CAM Pulse successfully mapped transitions, harmony, and stress via real-time coherence track. I don't know, like high coherent spikes during stillness and reflection. Pulse frame adapted dynamically, signaling resistance and alignment errors. And the key findings of it all was that pulse frame resonance closely reflects the subject's intent. My intent was to build working order based on everything and all the heroes that I knew. The CAM Pulse system represents a new class of human aware, a new class of sensor integrated technologies, those capable not merely of recording data but interpreting life through waveform coherence. By merging foundational physics, information theory, and signal intelligence with a novel waveform calculus, cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics. There it is. This is my invention, my gift, and this framework offers a path toward unifying perception, motion, and decision as a continuous field of resonance. And I think that's neat. And this thesis has introduced a formal cyclomorphic derivative to model rhythmic and coherent change. A coherence field that weights sensor trust dynamically in real time. Pulse frame is an engine capable of visually mapping resonance and disruption. It'll be like, oh, okay, well, hey, let's look at a 3-month map. Well, man, this week I was real off. Why? Well, let's go in and see what was going on. Like how much you could identify your own pathology by simply just having something keep you accountable. I tested a modular prototype. Everything that I've done is all commercially available sensors and embedded computing. Three years ago, I knew nothing at all whatsoever. Within the last year, I have began writing languages in math for computers I don't even begin to understand. Embedded computing, man, it's going to be a wild world. Let's talk. The implications of this. CAM has immediate relevance in many different domains. Wearable AI systems for military or emergency or medical personnel, cognitive mapping for behavioral neuroscience or human-machine interface research, signal intelligence and threat detection both in remote sensing and urban noise environments, and therapeutic and training systems that monitor coherence loss. as an early indicator of stress, trauma, decline, Alzheimer's. In the future, I'd like to expand the sensor matrix to include, GPS, skin conductivity, LiDAR, or EEG. We're talking integrating a memory-based learning layer for individual adaptation, right? Modeling multi-agent coherence, human to human, human to machine, publishing the Pulse Frame API for external research development, like things I'd like to do, time coherence models into symbolic logic and decision ethics. Like that's the goal. Building field hardened hardware for extreme operational environments and creating interface that for everyday real-time feedback, that you could get something out of this. The idea is that CamPulse reframes how we observe ourselves. It's an idea in my head, it's how I see things, and it's not as linear agents reacting to the world, but as waveform beings constantly harmonizing with it. And in this model, coherence becomes the key metric for navigating uncertainty. Coherence, right? Action, reflection, coherence becomes a key metric for navigating uncertainty. And now that we're using this robot as a force multiplier, gaining time per se. I don't know, I'm just beginning to understand all this, and I'm trying to understanding when and why we choose to act in a world that is increasingly dominated by artificial noise and is soon to be artificially intelligent things, algorithmic persuasion and surveillance. The idea that CamPulse offers a countermeasure rooted in truthful sensing and field-based awareness. It invites us to listen to our signal, inside or outside, optimize for resonance and move in accordance with reality. We can feel, not just measure. The pulse is live. The wave is unfolding and the field is yours. Like, it's right there, brother. We're right here. It's a wild time to be alive. So here's the thought. In mapping my life, I was at the top of the way that this appears on screen is like almost as if it's a tornado. And you can see as you go up and out in your life where in the coherence you've found yourself from where you are based on events and how you reacted. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what the future is, but I know that I watched enough crazy movies that there's a few things that should be foundationally set. I don't know what the term for it would be in Latin. Man, I wonder if I could find out. Well, I want to say that I came up with this all on my own, but none of this would be possible if it wasn't for this NVIDIA Jetson Nano personal AI shenanigans. Like, ridiculous power. Ridiculous amount of power. Like, it was 400 million billion computations or something in it in the most ridiculous short time. Anyways, the formulation of Maxwell's equation in the 19th century, right? The unified electric and magnetic phenomena into a single coherent electromagnetic field idea. I sat on a plane going to Iceland and I read about Maxwell in this weird book, and you can see it in the magnetic field. It gives you kind of an idea of it, and you can go from something micro, a desktop experiment, to witnessing when I got to Norway above the Arctic Circle and seeing the northern lights, to grasp the macro idea of it all. Quantum field theory, QFT replaces point particle determinism with probabilistic field excitation. Every particle is modeled as a quantized excitation of an underlying field, right, with probability amplitudes evolving over time. Importantly, QFT acknowledges the role of the observer, vacuum fluctuation and phase interface in shaping outcomes, where QFT primarily serves as microscopic domain, and CamPulse appropriates its principles at the mesoscopic and human interaction scale, treating behavior, decision-making, and sensory data as emergent excitations in a human-machine coherence field. This reframing acknowledges not only the influence of environment on action, but also the feedback from action into field modulation. Like, you're now you're in this plane, you're playing, right? The other part is the Shannon information theory. The entropy, signal, compression. Claude Shannon introduced a statistical framework to quantify the transmission of information in noisy channels. He came with this equation that measures the uncertainty in a signal source and guides the optimization of bandwidth fidelity and compression in systems with limited transmission capacity. I hope I'm coming in 5x5. Let me know. So, like biological neural pathways or low power sensors, minimizing uncertainty is critical. And you can feel that when you're stressed out. right? Uncertainty. Well, this is going to give you a little bit more hope. CAN-PULSE expands on this by moving from uncertainty. It moves from uncertainty minimization to coherence maximization. That is, rather than merely maintaining signal integrity, it seeks to interpret the alignment or resonance of multiple signal domains. Mechanical, behavioral, cognitive, the shift recognizes that in human sensor systems, meaningful convergence is more critical than raw entropy reduction. Markov processes path-dependent behavior in predictive fields. This was a Markov chains and Markov decision process, MDPs, right? MDPs describe systems in which the future state depends only on the present state. Not on the full history of the system. These models underpin modern stochastic analysis and are widely used in behavior prediction systems. System modeling and artificial intelligence. Markov chains are why when you start typing into Google, the prediction of what's coming up next is based on the letters and their frequency used. CAN-PULSE integrates Markovian logic modeling, decision state transitions, especially in physical motion, like ambulatory gait motion, breathing, walking, micro choices, and dynamic environments, or feedback and closed loop AI human interfaces. Unlike traditional Markov models, CAN-PULSE does not isolate transitions but overlays them with a coherence waveform. In that, it thus captures not just discrete transitions but the harmonic patterns and anticipation deviation over time. The classical theory of CAN-PULSE expansion is Maxwell interprets local EM fields as real-time coherence maps. Maxwell interprets locals as real-time coherence maps and embeds RF detection into biologically inspired awareness. Quantum field theory applies field excitation logic to human behavior and sensor input. It treats motion, thought, and feedback as probabilistic field states. Shannon shifts from entropy reduction to resonance construction, interpreting signal quality as coherence, not just fidelity. And Markov integrates path-dependent transition modeling into waveform mapping and builds predictive coherence field across time. CAN-PULSE thus forms a multi-sensory field interpretation engine. It is designed to read, synthesize, and forecast dynamic system states using biologically inspired principles, but with mathematical rigor, drawn from electromagnetic theory, probabilistic interference, and information science. In this framework, motion, decision, feedback, and waveform are not separate. They are synchronous expressions of a deeper field-level coherence. The CAN-PULSE framework introduces a novel form of mathematics, cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics, designed to interpret complex systems as coherence waves. That's all we're doing is reading the truth of the environment. The term cyclomorphic denotes a class of mathematical forms that change continuously through rotational, elliptical, and spiraling transformations, right, in phase space. And these are not merely like geometric paths, but energetic and informational morphologies, where form is a function of internal state, external stimulus, and environmental resistance. I guess that'll go back in the math. We'll jump onto that later. The basics of CAM interpretation is traditional fields describe force value. Coherence is basically what we're going for at this point. In field operation, the pulse frame of real-time visualization of the coherence is generated by projecting the coherence field into either a 2D or 3D topology. With these, you can, there's 3 different angles of it. You can pick up different rhythmic alignments and motion vectors. You can cross correlation to each other. The theoretical foundation allows for the construction of operational model capability. That's, I guess, all I'm trying to get with that. The methodology to test the functional viability of CAN-PULSE as a dynamic coherence interpretation system. A full stack prototype is developed and subjected to field conditions. This section of my dissertation, I kind of want to do as its own thing. I'm going to leave that out. I'll give you what my objectives were. Capture synchronized multimodal sensory data from a subject in motion, walking, turning, driving, decision, while a person was making decisions. Did you know that you can pick up wireless addresses from everybody's tire pressure monitoring sensors? Well, I used those to track waveforms on I-25. This past summer, Well, another objective is just to fuse that RF inertial and environmental, the signals into a unified coherence map, something that you could see live. You can see where you're at in the path at the moment without having to update it. I'd like to apply cyclomorphic mathematics to interpret waveform structure across other modalities. If anybody has any ideas and wants to work and get together, please email me. Yeah, I don't know. I can upload a component specification list if you guys are interested, just to see in the things and stuff that I'm using. We could talk about the processing pipeline. The idea for most of this stuff was actually, it came from the study of the human brain to see certain things turn on and turn off before others. Like I don't want to give too much data away, but we structured the way that this coherence frame interprets things is based on the exact same way that a human brain takes in all of its senses. So the antennas are coded to sight, sound, smell, in order based on their individual importance. Basically, that prototype demonstrated working implementation of coherence-based signal fusion, interpreted through cyclomorphic mathematics and rendered via real-time pulse frame. And by dynamically weighting sensor input and correlating internal and external rhythms, the system behaves analogous. The system behaves to a perceptual nervous system, capable of detecting loss of alignment, external anomaly, or decision state shifts. The methodological, maybe it'll help me learn how to speak better. I'm trying. Every day, I'm going to be a better speaker. That's why I'm doing this now. The methodological foundation prepares the way for field trials, scaling of the sensor array and applications in defense, health, and cognitive augmentation context. Lots of places to go, lots of things to do. I don't want to go through the test condition stuff. Maybe a couple of them. Let's see what we got. Forested terrain, urban RF interference zone. So it's got some math to it, but trial number 3 is urban RF interference zone. So average background magnetic radiation I was reading at the time was 0.52. Noted key sites where coherence fields showed significant RF noise, intrusion degrading cross-sensor alignment, however audio and IMU channels maintain local coherence. Tagged. Sudden external RF spike, local 5G transmitter nearby. Pulse frame displayed a bifurcation of coherence topography. No ring form, causing a sharp drop from CI to 03.1. Recovery. System reweighted internal inertial and photonic channels automatically within 1.3 seconds. The interpretation of all this was CAN Pulse demonstrated adaptive survivability under signal duress. RF interference was not simply a data loss, but became interpretable as an environmental field event. Kinda cool. That's nice. One of the most critical findings across all those trials is that the deviation itself carries signal. Instead of treating noise or error as failure, belittling and downing person, right? Instead of treating it as a failure, CAN Pulse interpreted the waveform misalignment as an indicated form of internal or external system shift, for instance. Urban signal dropout became a topological ring of dissonance. Pauses in motion revealed hidden harmonics not visible during high output or high input activity. In decision-making moments triggered measurable waveform inflection, consistent with internal deliberation and micro muscle tensions. These findings suggest that CAN Pulse is not just a sensor platform, it is a field-aware cognition model mapping both physiological state and environmental feedbacks as resonance logic. CAN Pulse reliably interprets coherence dynamics across modalities. Pulse frame visualizations enable real-time awareness of resonance and misalignment and adaptive recovery. Sensor-weighted feedback enables survivability in hostile signal environments. Emergent behavior patterns may open new frontiers in cognitive state mapping, field readiness assessments, and environmental harmonic profiling. The idea that CAN Pulse is a unified theory of coherence through cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics, presented to you by Kevin Wells. That's me. I hope you guys dig it. I am so stoked, man, to bring it all together. A year's worth of work, starting another business, doing it, making it legit. I don't know, it's kind of cool, man. Pretty fucking weird. System represents like a new class of human-aware sensor integrated technology, and there is some crazy stuff coming. And the tech I'm trying to come up with, it's not just capable of merely recording data, but of interpreting life through waveform coherence by merging foundational physics, information theory, signals intelligence, and a novel waveform calculus fucking box you stick in your back pocket. Cyclomorphic ambulatory mathematics is wild. This idea, this framework offers like an idea of unifying perception, motion, and decisions as a continuous field resonance, like, with the ability, it's just, I would have never a million years thought I'd be here, man. So I want to say thank you, and thanks for listening to my winded update. I hope you guys got some questions, and rock and roll.